Hello, Cinema Makeup School students, friends, and family. Mary Lou here with another industry interview. I'm excited to chat with today's guest, who is an award-winning makeup artist and, like so many of us at CMS, a self-proclaimed monster lover. Thank you for being here, Eryn Krueger Mekash.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and very honored that you wanted to interview me.
Let's talk a little bit about how you got into the makeup industry.
Well, I got into the makeup industry a long time ago before internet, kind of searching out what I wanted to do. And it just started mostly with being a fan. I was a huge fan of Godzilla, of Hammer films, and all kinds of stuff. They used to play it on Saturday afternoon, kind of, a film fest kind of thing on Saturdays. And my brother and I always watched all the horror movies. And it was when I was a little kid. I was like 7 or 8. So I got to be part of that whole 1981, 82 influx of amazing horror films. So I worked at a video store, and one of the pluses was I got to bring home any videotape I wanted. So I saw everything. And, but I got to see, I think it really started clicking in was when I saw American Werewolf in London and The Thing in a drive-in. It was one of those real eye openers because they just started to do a lot of behind the scenes stuff then. So that was kind of like airing on television. Then Thriller came out. I met like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I started researching and finding that there were magazines. And then when I was in college, working at a ski shop, which, I was taking art classes and going, what am I going to do with my life? Someone came in and gave me a flyer for Sandy Berman's Hollywood Film School, which was basically like learning the basics of makeup effects and theater and things like that. I learned the basics of life casting, sculpting, mold making, and foam running. So when I went into, a job, hopefully, I would kind of know the materials and know what I was seeing. And she helped me, she was my first mentor, and she helped me to, here's a list of shops, call them up, see if you can get a job. And I got a job, went back to college, and then that, like about 4 weeks into my next semester, John Beekler called me to be, like an intern and beginning kind of sweep up girl. And he let me do some sculpting and mold making and did foam running and go to set and all kinds of stuff. So I kind of got my big break, even though it was, a beginning level thing of, I was calling shops. I interviewed at every shop in town and brought my little crummy book of makeup that I had done, like a little picture book of makeups I'd done on myself, which were really awful. But I think people saw that I was passionate about it. And I always say, enthusiasm is a huge part of this job. I think that being a horror fan, being a makeup fan, all these years has really kept me interested and loving my job still, because it just it always keeps me afloat. And I ended up taking the Dick Smith advanced makeup course, and constant education along the way, even 33 years into it now. I'm still learning all the time. I've taken tons of classes during this isolation, which has kept me motivated. So
yeah, which is really great, because there's been so much access to artists that maybe we didn't have access to prior because everybody was working. So now there's some time, and I've noticed that all of the professionals that have been in the industry for a while are like, I have all this information I want to share with people, and they're doing it, which I think is amazing. And you had mentioned the importance of like how eager you were, like your book wasn't quite top notch at the time, but they saw that you were into the skill set, you were into the niche, you were into horror, you were into creatures. And that says so much more, because you could be the best makeup artist ever, but if you are a pain to work with, or you just seem like, whatever, I'm here, they're not going to want to work with you. But I'd much rather work with somebody who's into it, but we can work on their skills.
Absolutely. I mean, that's you're spending so many long hours with someone, and when you work as a team, and you want to be with somebody that you enjoy and that is fun to be with and has a great attitude, because that's going to propel you. And it's the same thing with this job. Can be incredibly difficult, and it can be very challenging and very defeating sometimes. And your crazy obsessive love of makeup keeps you going back and keeps you motivated. So I always say, if you don't obsessively love it. If you're just like, I want to do makeup, this is not the job for you. Your job in this business has to be propelled by your completely obsessive love of it. I mean, I'm 52 years old. I've been doing this a long time, and my passion for makeup grows every day. And it started when I was a little kid, and I've never wanted to do anything else. I just had some stumbling blocks in getting there because there wasn't the information that there is now. My parents were very supportive. That's a huge part of it too, was one of the reasons why I was able to do things. My mother, I had not driven like 2 miles past my house at the time when I was going to interview. So my mother drove me to every interview in these crazy industrial buildings, like in North Hollywood, and drove me to Marina Del Rey, to Boss Films to interview, and like all these places. And she was just like, oh my God, I'm sending my 18-year-old child into this building with a little makeup book. And she was, I mean, they were incredibly supportive, let me quit college. Like, they didn't want me to do that, but they let me, but I didn't stop working. So that was one of the things that was really important, was having a support system. And whether or not you get it from a parent or a sibling or a friend, having somebody that cares that much about your happiness is a really big deal.
Yeah, and I think that's important for anyone to find, whether it is in your family or it isn't. Like, there's someone out there who you can connect with and who will care and support you, and you need to surround yourself with those kind of people. So I'm really glad to hear that you had that kind of support. Now, I like to ask my guests if there was ever a significant project, like everybody has one of those, but if there's a significant project to you that you felt was really formative to your career.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's probably 72 of them.
Right.
But I mean, there's a few that I think definitely stand out as films or projects that made me the artist I am today. I was the department head on Sabrina the Teenage Witch for the entirety of the series. And I was given that opportunity when I was like, I think I was 28 years old. And that was one of the things where I was kind of just doing my own thing and having little shops make little makeup effects gags for me and stuff. And that was like a really big deal of getting my feet wet, of doing the design work and running a department. That job, working on, I did 2 World War II films for Tanya McComas, who was the department head. And she always was like, you do the makeup effects part, you do the makeup effects gags. And so when we would get the gags from the makeup effects shop, and I think there was Tinsley Studio at that time, she was just like, you just do it. So it was really great to have somebody that's my good friend, but also just trusting in me to be able to carry out the gags on set, which was, having Clint Eastwood over your shoulder. That was crazy. There's Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. So those 2 films, as I was the key on it, and on both of those. And those were just really amazing projects for me. And then probably the other one, there's a couple others, smaller films, Alpha Dog, where I met my husband. And then also, there were 2 films I did a couple of years ago that nobody really saw, but they were important character works. I thought there was one I did with Bryan Cranston called Wakefield that Zoe Hay and I did together. We did like 13 different levels of looks throughout like the 4 weeks we were shooting, and we would do like sometimes up to 4 different levels a day. It was incredibly challenging and very rewarding. And then right after that, I did a film called To the Bone, which was about a woman who had anorexia and bulimia. And it was a very sensitive subject, but I think we did a really great job of portraying her illness and recovery. So those films, I think, stand out to me as ones that didn't really get any, those 2 films were ones that didn't get as much acclaim, but they meant a lot to me because I really enjoyed working with the actors. I loved working with Bryan Cranston, and they were great projects. The filmmakers were all women on both of those projects. There were producers and directors on both of those, and it was a different vibe, and it was really fun.
Right. And I think that a lot of people will realize that throughout your career, the most rewarding projects are not necessarily the highest profile ones. So
that's right.
Definitely keep working and keep doing things. So you've mentioned all sorts of makeup. You specialized in the special effects for specific projects, but you do makeup, beauty makeup, and you also design, you head departments. So you do a little bit of everything. Would you consider prosthetics and special effects your specialty, or is it kind of all of it?
I don't know if that's my specialty. I really love doing it. I love character work. I love doing horror. I don't necessarily know that I specialize in it. I would say that I love doing it, and I think there's people that do it a million times better than I do, and I usually hire them to make me look good. But I think that I would say maybe my skill set is more of designing the look of a show, trusting my team to fulfill my vision, and listening and creating what directors and creators of shows want to see on film. So I think that it's more department heading and having a skill set that ranges all across the board. I think that I was lucky enough to be taught by people that said, you have to know everything. There's no, like, I just want to do beauty. Like, nobody wants to hire anybody that just does beauty or that just does makeup effects, for that matter. I recently had a friend of mine say that he wanted to work more. And I said, well, I've got a big show coming up. I've got 200 something people a day. You can come and do beauty makeup. And he said, oh, I don't do beauty. I said, you're going to learn, because that's your bread and butter. And regardless of how brilliant you are at makeup effects, you're going to learn how to do beauty. It's the same skill set. It's just different products, and you're enhancing someone as opposed to, maybe deteriorating someone or making somebody look like a creature. He said, okay, I'm really scared. I'm like, you're going to do it. So he brought in his kit, and he just did so well. And he was like, oh my gosh, I have this new skill set. It's so important to know how to do everything. So I think that the time that I was brought up, it was, you need to know how to do beards, you know how to do bruises, cuts, everything out of kit. I learned actually I took a UCLA extension course from Michael Westmore, and he taught a full day course, and you brought your makeup kit and you sat with somebody and you each did makeup on each other. So you learned how to do it on someone else, but you watched him do every imaginable out of kit thing. And just seeing somebody do it makes a big difference than back then when I was just reading it out of a book. You're just like, oh, how do I do that? What are the diagrams here? So there's a lot to be said for seeing somebody do something, but you have to have all the skills.
Right. And is there anything that, like, so you mentioned your guy that you brought on to do beauty, if he was scared of that, was there anything in your career that scared you that now you're like, oh, I can't believe that scared me. I'm so glad I know it now?
Everything every day. It's kind of the fun part of it, is that it is scary. We're all kind of a little bit of daredevils in that way. But there are things that I have learned to do kind of on the fly, like where I'm saying, oh, I know I can do this, and I'm going to practice it beforehand, and then hopefully I'll be able to learn from it as I go along. And that's happened to me several times. Donna Messina, who was one of my other mentors who ran the ABC makeup department, gave me a ton of opportunities to do makeup effects where it was some of those kind of like reveal makeups and stuff. So, and painting foam prosthetics on camera and doing all kinds of stuff, just putting it on, it was video then. I'm not exactly sure what they're shooting on now, but they used to be on video. And so doing these crazy makeups where they'd have to peel them off at the end of the day, it was always just kind of like, you've tried it, you've tested it, and you've read about it, and you're just going to wing it, kind of thing. You have to have a lot of courage and be confident, but there's tons of stuff that scares me. And it is about learning new things every day. You have to be able to talk to other people and learn from them all the time. I have huge teams of people that I work with, and I'm always going in and seeing what they're doing and new products. Like, what's that? Oh, I use it for this thing. Oh, that's so cool. So you just got to be open and adaptable.
Right. And you've been adaptable because you've been in the industry so long that I'm sure there's tons of things you've had to adapt to, like beyond products. Like the cameras have changed, the lighting has changed, the people changed, the dynamics changed. Is there any kind of changes that you saw along your career that were for the better?
Well, they've had, a lot of shows became HD. Everybody Loves Raymond was one of the TV shows that I did, and it was one of the very first to do an HD camera. And we had to do a lot of testing and to figure it out. A lot of our reds were flaring and things like that. But, it was all about testing, and everyone wanted to try this new device and a new way of doing things. And it was very much trial and error. One of the things, though, is that a lot of people didn't have HD TVs at that point. So as we progressed into big, giant TVs, and the resolution and everything is so insane. The cameras have gotten better over the years. The camera that we used for Hollywood was called the Sony Venice, and that was very much like a film type camera, and it's just come so, in 20 years has come so far. So now we're looking at stuff that looks and feels more like film, and they can kind of adapt it in post and make it look brighter or darker or more saturated in post, and that's kind of a cool thing. It just has a lot to do with testing and making sure that you have a good grasp on the technology. I think that's one of the biggest things for sure, is the technology has progressed so much.
Right, and that's going to just continue to grow, and it helps to keep the industry on its toes. So you don't just learn like, this is the one way that you do this, great, we're done. It's, you learned that, now here's a new factor, now how can we grow? So Hollywood was one of the most beautiful shows I've seen like in the last handful of years. It's so gorgeous, and you've done lots of work with Ryan Murphy projects. Like, you have kind of gone along through almost all of them, I think I noticed on your IMDb. Tell me about that relationship, because you started as part of the makeup team and now you're heading departments for him. What's it like having a long-term relationship with a filmmaker?
Well, I think Ryan and I just connected on a funny personal level, I think, is that we're the same age, and that we have the same love of culture and fashion, and we get the same references. So I think that is how it started off initially. I met him on Nip Tuck. James McKinnon was the department head. He had done the pilot and asked me to come on as the key. And shortly after he started back on the show, he decided to go back to his show that he had done the year before, which was Alias. So I moved up to department head. And as we went along through Nip Tuck, I ended up being involved in, all of the makeup effects. The Bermans were doing all of the beautiful surgeries, but we were kind of doing the post and the pre-looks, and we were really having a great time on that show. And then he asked me to go do Glee, and so I also did a pilot for him at that time too, called Pretty Handsome, which was really, I think, a little bit was very ahead of its time. It was about a man that was going through transgender surgery and realized that he was actually a woman. And so it was just a little ahead of its time. It was like 2007, I think, is when it came out. And then we did the Glee pilot. I did Glee for a couple of years. I did Running with Scissors with him. It just kind of started building until it came into like, can you staff the show for me? Can you keep an eye on this for me? It's just, it kind of exploded into this crazy situation. And back then we saw a lot more of Ryan because there was maybe like one show or two shows. And then of course now he's been running this incredible empire, which covers films and documentaries and all kinds of stuff through Netflix, TV, so many TV shows. I can't even keep a handle on all of them. So it's, this has been, the isolation has been, I think, the first time that I've had a break in, many, many, many years. So, yeah, we just kind of connected and got each other really well. I'm very protective of him and his vision. So that has a lot to do with it. I hire people that feel the same way about him and get his perspective on everything. People do shows for me in New York. They do Pose and Politician. They do 911 here. I've established a lot of shows and then I move on and hand them off to people. But it has a lot to do with Ryan's trust in me and that we get each other's sensibilities. Right.
And that's something that I go back to a lot, is that you need to be a good human in this industry. Like, you'll find the good people that you want to work with, and it's not about you, it's about the team. and it's about the vision and how can you work together, and then also being able to connect on a human level, because there's more to you than just I want to work on your show. It's I like these movies, I like this thing in culture, I like this kind of fashion, and then you find the people that you connect with and collaborate with, because that's ultimately what it is. It's their vision, but it is a collaboration, and you want to build good teams. So it sounds like you're doing that across the board, and you do everything from glam to gore on his projects, which is amazing, because you did like a lot of American Horror Story, right? Of course, that's got lots of gore, and then Hollywood is very beauty and has a lot of prosthetics, which I didn't realize, which I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about. But how involved are you in those things? Is it usually you're like, hey, we can, like, what if we blow up a head, or what if we make this kind of thing, and you give it to him and it gets put into the show? Or is it very strictly like, here's the script and then you break it down from there?
A lot of it is that the script, we'll get the scripts for American Horror Story, and sometimes there'll be stuff that seems repetitive, so we kind of say, hey, can we change it up and do this? Sometimes he says yes, sometimes he says no. So a lot of it is my husband, Mike Mekash, is the assistant department head on that with me, and also Kim Ayers, who's been my longtime assistant department head. The only season that I didn't do makeup on was last year on 1984. I produced, but I just kept an eye on the department, and my husband was actually the department head last year. So I kind of had like I stepped back and kept an eye on everything, but a lot of it was Mike comes up with the craziest stuff to do. And a lot of times we have people that come in that contribute to the look of the show, and it's all about teamwork, and it's all about what can you do to make something better or more interesting, or also something that's like, let's do this kind of a blood spray, or let's do this kind of a neck slice, or how about we stab somebody in the neck instead of slicing their throat. So it has a lot to do with just really being as creative as possible. There's, the one year we did Cult, Dave Anderson from AFX was doing all of our prosthetics for us. And he mentioned that for the Andy Warhol part for Evan Peters, that he would like, he had a bunch of Andy Warhol prosthetics. And so we suggested that, and we decided to just go for it. And Ryan really liked it. So then it kind of led to him creating all these different characters for Evan. And we did just so much character work. And a lot of it was like tons of prosthetics, and some of it was just minimal, like a nose piece or a beard or something like that. When he was Jesus, I think he had a beard on or some things. But anyway, there was just so much crazy stuff. So we did like, I think about 8 different looks on Evan that year. But sometimes it kind of builds on each other. Like it's like, oh, we could do this. What do you think about that? Oh, that's a good idea. That kind of thing. So right. Just to be open I think that I'm definitely an open department head as far as taking suggestions and listening and wanting to make things as cool and as interesting as possible. So I'm not the one that's like, I have to have my hand in every single thing. I'm more of like you do your look and I'll see if I like it, and then change it up from there, and we just work together. So a lot of it is trusting your team too.
Yeah, what great collaboration. Like you said, just like building good people around you, and then trusting that they're going to make you look good. Because if you get the right people, it's going to be just good for everyone. It's not an ego thing of like, I can't get somebody better than me. Like, you want to get somebody better than you.
Always.
Yes.
Always.
So on Hollywood, so Hollywood's up for awards now, which is amazing. And that's on Netflix right now. So if you guys haven't seen it, definitely check it out. It's a beautiful show. And I had no idea that for Rock Hudson that he had prosthetics, and for the agent that he had like looks done to him too. It was seamless. So tell me about that, the kind of work that you guys had to do to make that happen.
Well, Ryan had seen Bombshell, and we'd done some subtle prosthetics before. And so he mentioned, I really would like to do some hooded eyes on Jake Picking, who very brilliantly played Rock Hudson. And so when I sat down with Vincent Van Dyke, whose company does all of our prosthetics last couple of years on things, he's amazing and has done award Oscar winning makeups and just an incredible artist. And so we sat down together to kind of figure out like what would be the best pieces to kind of step Jake into the Rock Hudson look. And he came up with, you know, he thought a little bit extra ears and maybe like a nose tip. So we kind of fine tuned it together, the lower lip and the eyelids. And so we just went ahead and did it. And then we did the test for Ryan, and Ryan was really happy with it. I think Jake initially would have been happy with just the eyelids, but he was an incredible trooper. And then later on in the show, his agent wants him to get his teeth fixed. So we had a set of veneers that were made. Vincent's shop made the veneers as well, and they're really well done. And then Gabby Quinones and I did that makeup together on set, and it consisted of applying the prosthetics and then doing a paint work, and then doing a kind of a corrective makeup on Jake with adding a little bit of eyebrow and warming him up and giving him a little bit of a bronze look. And I think we got it down to an hour. That wasn't with hair. Hair was like another 15 or 20 minutes, which he also had his hair dyed quite often. And then and a haircut and everything. And so the Michelle Siglia is the department head and designer on Hollywood. And so we work closely together on everything. So we did that makeup. And then Karen Jackson did the application for Henry Wilson, who was played by Jim Parsons, and brilliantly. And so that consisted of all kinds of people helped to get that makeup ready to go, which is Vincent made the bald pate, Sasha Camacho did the hair punching, Mike Mekash came in and did an understructure, which was similar to the one that we did for Versace. So I said, can you just come in for a couple of days and fine tune the understructure? So Mike did that, which was consisted of off-site and like a little vacuum form with some pins to pull the hair down flat. Then Karen did the application and the painting, all the makeup. He wore contacts, he wore teeth. And then Michelle had this beautiful toupee made, which was a bad toupee, so that it's like you can see how heavy it is. And because they wanted it to look like Henry Wilson's hair, who wore a bad toupee. So that was really hard for her to do something that looked, kind of weird. So, which is funny because everyone says, I love everything about Hollywood except that, Jim Parsons' wig looked so strange. And it was like, that's because it was supposed to look that way. So sometimes it's a fine line between, you're trying to make something look weird and people thinking that it was a weird thing and you didn't know that it was weird. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot of those kind of things. We had some beat up makeups. We had a few character makeups, and a lot of that kind of work is my favorite work, is doing subtle pieces and doing character work, or just slightly changing the look of someone's face. Like for Sarah Paulson, when she was in OJ, we did, we changed up a little mole on her lip. We did, made her eyes look different shape. Sometimes just like the little subtle things that are out of kit can go really far into making somebody look more like the actual person they're portraying. So that's one of my favorite things to do. And Hollywood was shot, our cinematographer, Simon, did such a beautiful job. And that camera has a lot to do with it. The lighting has a lot to do with it. And that it's very technicolor. They wanted it to be very optimistic and very brilliant looking, with tons of jewel tones and reds and warmth. And I think it came out so pretty. And Ryan wanted it to, the look of it to belie how Hollywood should have been. It should have been this inclusive, cool place where, we're still fighting so much these days. And it's very timely. Ryan's really like a step ahead of a lot of things.
Very
and
so.
It came out like right before our rising up of standing up for the rights of everyone. And it came out right before that, which was really wild. But we talk about that a lot in the film, about in the series, about people getting to have a seat at the table and getting to represent themselves and to be accepted, and across the board, women, gay people, the whole LGBTQIA community and Black people, Asians. I mean, it's just like it covers everything. And I think a lot of people found it to be very satisfying. I had people call me and say, this is the first time I've been represented on a television show. This is the first time that I felt included. I mean, it's just like, you're over there doing red lipstick on everybody and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be pretty. And then at the end, when it comes out and you see how incredibly lovely it was and what a cool project it was, and to have people call you and say how moving it was to them is really makes you feel great. Like you're not just out there doing beauty makeup, or doing some fun character makeups. Like it really means a lot to people. And that's so important. I think that's a really big deal.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt, because Chris's character comes out and says he's Filipino American. I'm Filipino American. I have never heard on any television show someone say that and claim that. And I just was like, what? We're here? And it was just really great, because I've definitely seen Filipino Americans on television shows and in films, but nobody's ever claimed it the way that was like, yep, this is me, this is what I am, and this is how we're going to become a director in Hollywood in this.
That's right.
Version, which was amazing for me. That's
so good. I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, it's I can relate to obviously the woman part of it, of getting handed this studio and then just running with it and being, through her grief, having Avis running the studio in the absence of her ill husband was so cool. But I do not relate to anyone else that's had heartbreak and not been able to see themselves in roles like that. And I just think it was incredibly moving.
Yes.
And sincere. It's a very sincere show.
It is, and it is definitely worth a watch. So if you haven't seen it yet, it is available on Netflix. So
it is.
Yes, let's talk about now. You are preparing to go back to set. So this is like the big change, the big elephant in the room, right? That we're all dealing with right now. Like, are we going to go back to work? Can we go back to work? What is it going to look like? What are you experiencing so far? Because you're in preparation to go back for some pickup shots for a project from earlier this year.
Yes, the show that I did from December to March called The Prom. It was based on a musical that was a big hit on Broadway a couple years ago, and Ryan bought the rights to it, and it's starring Meryl Streep and Nicole Kidman, James Corden, Kerry Washington, and a cast of incredible people. And it's a musical and dancing and all kinds of great stuff in it, huge cast. And so Netflix decided that, right at the end that we needed to shut down and reassess. So we have about 5 days left of shooting. So that being said, our union, IATSE and Local 706 put together an incredible, cohesive, simple to understand, it's 21-page document, but it covers every base of how we can be safe going forward. And Netflix has been amazing at having our safety as a number one concern. We've been tested every week. We have taken classes online. We have taken physical classes on cleaning. We just did yesterday a class where we did a run through with all of our gear on, which consists of masks and shields and gowns and gloves. And it's going to be something we have to get used to, but it is totally doable. We are an adaptable group. Makeup and hair are the most flexible. We are prepared for this and we are ready for this. This is not something that we are incapable of doing. 90% of the stuff that we're being asked to do is stuff we're already doing. Separate brushes for actors, separate makeup bags for actors, having, individual bottles of things for each actor as opposed to, here's some lotion, that kind of thing. So having everybody have a little something tiny. We all love to do tiny little bottles of things. This is our realm. This is where we get to shine, right? So a lot of it is wiping and cleaning and spraying and disinfecting and wiping a chair down and putting a chair cover on. There's a lot of that. But once we get into the groove of it, you will see that it is doable And I think the hardest thing that we found as a group, because I work with my friends, is the social distancing, because you want to hug people, you want to stand close to them. It's harder to hear through the masks, but the N95 masks that we will be wearing, which are provided by production, are not as hard to wear as, like, say, the cotton masks that we're wearing every day. You can breathe really easily in them. And then the shield is another preventative measure for the actor as well as for you. You're changing out stuff during the day a little bit, like you might change your gown. You're changing gloves a lot. Sometimes you have to wear gloves and sometimes you don't. But there isn't any restriction on how you do your job, as far as you can use a blow dryer, you can use an airbrush, you can do prosthetics. All of that is the same. They don't want to disrupt your actual process of a show. So we're stepping into this. There's a few shows that are going to be going back in the next couple weeks, and everyone is going to get a taste of how we do this. They're giving us plenty of time to get ready, plenty of time to do our cleaning in the morning and cleaning in the evening. We're doing shorter days, which we've been doing, though, for a couple years now. We've been doing the 10-hour days. Makeup is probably in for 12 hours, something like that. But Netflix has been, on the forefront of this safety issue, and I've been so impressed with their abilities and their abilities to keep us safe. I think we have a COVID specialist with us that is not scolding us, but saying, like, now just remember, you need to do this. Oh yeah, that's right. So it's like they're helping us get into the routine of what we're going to be doing. And, probably by the time we get really into this and doing it for a few months, then all of a sudden they'll say, you don't have to wear your face shields anymore, or something like that, So if we want to work, this is how we're doing it. So if you want a job and you want to work, it's all about your flexibility, your adaptability, and just taking a breath and relaxing and just getting into it. And there are people that are going to help you. You're not just like winging it. There's all kinds of rules in place to keep you safe. So once you get out there and give it a try, you're like, oh, I can do this. This is not undoable. So.
Right. And it's like, I kind of think of it like you're learning how to do the hard stuff first. Like for our artists that are students right now and that they're going to be new into the industry, it's like learning to drive stick shift first. It's all going to be kind of clunky and kind of difficult. But then once you get into driving automatic, it's gonna be like, oh yeah, I know how to do all of this. It's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's I was telling my husband, I think it was like this morning or something, I said, I feel a little bit of like relief, like kind of knowing that we are capable of doing this stuff, and that we got a thumbs up on our process, and that everybody seems confident in us. I think a lot of it, though, is that a lot of times I think production doesn't know that we already do a lot of that stuff, and they also said we're very confident in makeup and hair to adapt to all this, so they're not as concerned about us having issues. And there's a lot of hand washing. There's a lot of hand washing, and a lot of hand sanitizer, and a lot of cleaning your station, and a lot of, like, when you use a Q-tip, it goes in a Ziploc bag, and that'll be your biohazard bag, and then that gets thrown away and you put a new bag down. So it's not just like throwing stuff in a trash can all day long. Like, that's going to get sealed and put into a biohazard container. It's just an extra step, but it's all about embracing it. And I think we can do it.
Yeah, good. And the adaptability, that's what us as artists are built for. That's why we're here. That's why we're creatives. And I really appreciate the outlook on how things are looking from the inside. So thank you for that. Is there anything else you would like to tell the students before we part?
Oh, I'm so excited for you guys getting to be part of Cinema Makeup School, because Cinema Makeup School has such a diverse and great amount of classes to take. And, with ZBrush, I love the teachers there. I love Neil. I want to thank Amanda Sharp for asking to have me be interviewed, which has been great. And just remember to be flexible and always be a huge horror fan if you are into that kind of thing, because it'll take you far. Whatever you're into, Find what you're passionate about and stick to it, because that's really a big part of your longevity of your career.
Thank you so much. That is wonderful advice. And I just appreciate this conversation so much. If you guys want to know more about Eryn's career, I'll make sure you guys have a link to her IMDb, and you can also follow her on Instagram at Makeup Hag. She posts pictures from behind the scenes a lot, and that's where you can see a lot of these transformations that I didn't even realize were there, because she's so good that they're seamless and you can't even tell. And it's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us for this interview. If you are liking them, please let me know. If there's someone you would like me to reach out to try and get on the show, let me know, and I will do my best to get them on. And I will see you guys hopefully in class sooner than later. Catch you guys next time.
Thank you.